thank you for coming to Shall We Consider. We have a very special treat today. His name is Ty Alexander. He is a writer, a podcaster, and a cryptid enthusiast. Hi, welcome to Shall We Consider. Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you inviting me to come on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Why don't you just tell a little bit about yourself, how you got interested in this kind of thing, writing and podcasting and creatures and the whole deal.
Absolutely. So I was born here in Southern Ohio. Spent my whole childhood out playing the creeks and the woods, and at a very young age, my dad, he introduced me to the X-Files and Unsolved Mysteries. Yeah, I'm a kid of the 90s, so like those were very, very prevalent.
Right.
And he got me into those shows, and I was just hooked from there on. Like, I remember seeing the old Unsolved Mysteries episodes where they'd have like Bigfoot or UFOs featured, and those always just like captivated me so much. So from pretty much that point on, I was always just super into Bigfoot in particular. I remember having the VHS for Harry and Henderson's and watching that a lot when I was a kid. I love that film. Still
That
today.
is a great film.
Yeah.
Just watched it recently.
Really? First time?
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Man, that is great.
It's, I got a daughter, and I had to show her, like, you got to watch this. This is great.
Oh, it is great. I have such fond memories of watching that with my dad when I was a kid. So,
Yeah.
that's a big one for me. But yeah, I've always just been super fascinated by just anything unexplained, anything cryptid related, UFO related. Those are like
Right.
my two like main interests.
Your go-tos. Yeah,
Yes.
I understand. Me as well. Well, I would like to talk about your book, and my understanding is it will be released June 10th. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, June 10th on Amazon. Right now you can find it on Amazon. You can pre-order the ebook version
Oh,
of
you
it.
can. Okay,
You
awesome.
can pre-order that,
That's
but the
great.
paperback drops on June 10th. The ebook
Yep.
will also drop on June 10th too, but there's a pre-order option for it as well.
Yeah, I read the first chapter. I got to tell you, it's very compelling. I really, I think you got something good going on there.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward for it to come out and read the whole thing. So, now is this something that you're hoping will turn into a series, or what is your plan? What are plans for it?
Yeah, so it's definitely going to be a series. Um I hope people join me for the ride, but I mean I have plans to make it into a series because I mean it doesn't really cost me anything to write except for my time and interest. And I just it's a story I've wanted to tell for a long time. So it definitely the plan is to turn into a series. The Monstrous World is kind of the banner that I'm building around it. The sequel is right now. I'm working on it. I'm pretty deep into the sequel right now.
Oh, awesome.
But I've been kind of putting it on the back burner while I'm still trying to edit and get the main novel ready to go.
Well, that's probably the way to go. If you're going to be a writer, you got to be prolific. It's a task.
Yeah,
For reading is yeah. Go ahead.
sorry, this is a dream I've wanted to do for a long time. Like I can't even begin to count how many stories I'd started and kind of lost interest in, never finished. Like I know somewhere I probably have like notebooks and folders just full of. I know my old Google Drive. My old Google Drive is just full of started projects that just never got finished.
Oh,
so
wow.
for me to finish this and get it out there is like just a dream come true.
That's awesome. I know I was a big fan of Stephen King, and I read that he had to sit down and write every day, whatever it was, even if he wasn't necessarily writing a book. He did the discipline to sit down and write. So my hat goes off to you because for me, writing is an arduous task. I don't mind writing, but that takes some discipline.
Yeah. One of the main things, because I know I'd always tried to write in the past, and I'd always like get to a point where like maybe I'd like find a plot hole or something like that in my own writing that would kind of deter me. And that was something I like when I started writing this. I was like, just get it on the paper. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
there's gonna be plot holes, and sure there's gonna be writing grammar mistakes and all that, but all that gets fixed. Like all that gets you catch on
Right.
that later. The main thing is just getting point A to point B, getting it finished, and that's how it was. Like the very first draft of this novel. I mean, I would dare say it's probably unreleasable. Is like I thought it was a fantastic, and like I read it, I wrote it, and then
Right.
after I got it finished, I go back and I start reading, and I'm like, oh my god, there's so many
Right.
plot holes and spelling grammar issues, but all that gets fixed. This the one that's releasing, Monstrous, the one that's
Mm-hmm.
releasing me, it's probably I would say probably the 11th revision.
Oh yeah.
That's actually
Yeah.
making it
I believe it.
to print, but yeah, that
Yeah.
was one thing I told my buddies. My buddies been wanting to write. And I told him, I was like, just get it on the page. Just whatever you do, just start writing and don't stop. And if you get stuck, just write past that, come back to it later.
Right. I think you're exactly right. I think it does take that. You have to let it flow and just get it out, and then you can come back and kind of look at it and go, "Oh, that works. That doesn't
Yeah,
work." You know. Um,
absolutely.
so with this book in the beginning, it looks like your character is in Mount Everest, and the Yeti.
Yes.
Why did you choose that particular area?
So the idea with Monstrous, I wanted to do with it. So I'm an avid reader. I love Steve Alton. That's one of my favorite
Hmm.
authors. He writes the Meg series and Locke, and one of my favorite authors. But also I like to read a lot of um, Sasquatch, cryptid horror books that are on
Hmm.
Amazon. Amazon is just full of that stuff,
Oh yeah.
and that's something I like to do. Is kind of like find one and buy, and I'll just read it, and um, I really like that. But with what I want to do with Monstrous, I didn't want to write a horror novel. Um,
Hmm.
that's the main thing. Is it's not a horror novel. I wanted to write an action adventure like novel. That's what I
Gotcha.
wanted. I wanted a big action adventure like summer blockbuster feel.
Okay.
Um, sprawling adventure with
Right.
characters, and so I wanted to encapsulate that by having this big action set piece at the beginning, and
Gotcha.
set it in Mount Everest. It's a very grand, a grand landscape. It's a very interesting setting. So you got to hook your audience at the beginning. So I thought, what
Yes.
better way to do it than drop them into this dark, rocky mountainside,
Yeah.
just to kick things off. So
Yeah, you set the tone very well. I'm definitely looking forward to it. Now, I would be remiss. This artwork is this Evan? Is this your
yeah,
partner?
Evan Guffey. Yeah, yep, my partner's
Yeah.
work. Yeah,
This is
uh,
awesome.
yeah, they
Looks like he's pretty talented.
yeah, and I think there's a video I'm gonna put on my social media here
Mhm.
soon. I think um
Okay, wait a minute.
because there's
Thing here. Sorry.
a time
I
lapse.
mean, remove you.
Oh, there you go. There's like a time lapse he does.
There we
Um,
go. I got
of
some contact information here.
There you go. You can follow me on my Instagram. I'm trying to get the Instagram off the ground.
Yeah,
It,
I did go there. Yeah,
oh, excellent.
you're getting it going.
Trying, yeah. It's tough to build that kind of stuff, from the ground up. But yeah, there's a video I'm gonna put out, I think, next week or so, our time, next week. But because he did it in Procreate, so you're able to see the whole start to finish time lapse, and it's very interesting. Because
Oh,
like
wow.
the Sasquatch was like a big thing for me to get it right. So there was a lot of revisions that you get to see. And it's very interesting. It was something I when he sent it to me and I watched it, it was super cool just to see the evolution of Sasquatch, that my Sasquatch, how it went from what he originally envisioned to what I was trying to envision.
Yeah, that's pretty scary one. It's, the all glowing, not just the eyes, but the whole entity is,
Yeah,
I guess that would be monstrous, wouldn't it?
yeah, exactly. It really did capture the essence of the novel, because I these two creatures that the book focuses on, which is the Sasquatch and the Yeti. That's the
Right,
premise of the novel.
right.
Um, they're two just mythical beings. I wanted them in this nice lands in this big grand landscape of the Pacific Northwest, and also there's elements of fire because it's an action adventure.
Right.
story. So of course there's some explosions and things of that nature. So
So your protagonist, I can't recall his name. What's his name?
Colton
Yep.
Wade is Ranger
Colton
Colton
Wade.
Wade is
That's
the
right.
protagonist. Yeah.
So what what drives him? What motivates him to take on this kind of
So
uh,
I don't want to give too
quest?
much away on it, but
No, yeah, just some
he is
motivation.
he's very he's tied to the park itself. It all takes place in this fictitious national park
Okay,
called Red Oak National Park.
I see.
Um and he has a very deep connection to the park itself, which you kind of find throughout the novel. And he's tied to, maybe secrets to the park that
Okay.
are kind of you see the connection of later as the novel goes on. Then we have Casey Monroe, who's the female protagonist, and she is a cryptozoologist. She's following in the footsteps of her father, who is a well-renowned cryptozoologist in the world. But she's kind of tarnished her reputation after his passing. She was involved in like a really schlocky,
Oh,
cryptid type show
right.
that kind of tarnished her reputation. So now she kind of has this chip on her shoulder to regain respect and kind of bring the seriousness that her father had for the science of
Right.
cryptozoology. Yeah.
Bring the honor back to the family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, that is awesome. Um, so is in this series, will you be writing about other cryptids or other creatures or
Yes.
other? Yeah.
Um, the sequel, I won't give too much away, but the sequel is called The Nest, is what it's called.
Okay.
So the next one will be called The Nest, and it's a monstrous world novel. So Monstrous is the overarching umbrella that all these
Right.
stories will eventually fall under. I'm planning four, this one being the first, and then a fourth novel being the final one, with the arc of the story I'm trying to tell.
Yeah.
So that's the plan. The Nest is going to take place in different settings. That's something I want to do. Is each one kind of have a diverse setting to kind of encapsulate the cryptid that's focusing on. And I actually have something here. I haven't showed this anyone yet, so this
All
will be
right.
something
Awesome.
you'll see for the first.
Oh,
I got this
cool.
in the other day.
Yeah.
This
Cool.
is
What do you got there?
this is our proof copy. So
Oh, wow.
this is the
Oh, I bet you love
novel.
that.
Oh, it was insane. It was
I mean, look at that. That is beautiful.
Yeah, it was so. The backside is this like man, this green screen's picking up, but
I
the
know.
backside is this
Yeah.
like green canvas type material, and that's
Yeah.
something that is
Well, in the media kit, you got
yeah,
these colors. It's nice. I like it.
that's something that's kind of the
Wow.
theme of this novel. And then as the for instance, the sequel is The Nest. It takes place in the desert setting, so
Oh,
this canvas will become tan canvas.
kind of what? Yeah.
And
Yeah.
where
Okay.
we
I
have the
got you.
tree here, it'll be a cactus. So that's going to
You're
kind of make everything nice and uniform.
I tell you what, you got it going on. You've really thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting the whole presentation. That is awesome. Well, I know you're proud just
Yeah,
to get that one going.
the presentation meant a lot to me because and this isn't disparaging anyone, but I've seen like some like self-published novels before that come out, and I've always thought maybe they looked a little amateurish and things like that with the presentation. So I wanted to make sure that I care a lot about this story, so I want to make
And you take
the
pride in
care.
what you're doing. Yeah.
Exactly. I wanted to make sure that people see it, they know that's something that was
Oh,
crafted
it's
with care.
you're crafting your own brand, and
Yeah.
that's great. That's what you need to do. Yeah, absolutely. That is cool, man.
Thank you.
Um, awesome. So I know you said maybe you want to talk about other creatures and things. Now not only is Ty a writer, he's also he does podcasts.
Yes. Yeah.
And let's just bring that up. Here we go.
Yeah, that's Bailey and myself, my friend Bailey. We've kind of taken a break from podcasting mainly because I wanted to
Mhm.
focus on some other stuff.
Oh,
And,
sure.
and she as well. She's a realtor, so she wanted to focus on that whole thing.
Yeah.
But it's a good time to be a realtor right now, so she's taking
Hey,
she's
real
taking
life.
time to focus on that. Yep.
Yeah. Real life gets in the way sometimes, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I
No,
wanted
this
to
is a
write.
cool. Go ahead.
I want to write in the with Cult Talk Conspiracy, this podcast. We did bi-weekly episodes, but we're also recording every week because
Right.
I was very big on wanting to stay ahead that way if we ever did need to take a break or take a week off,
Right.
weren't scrambling
Yeah.
for episodes. So writing an hour-long podcast was taxing, and then I found it was hard to also write. It was kind of managing, do I want to work on my novel or do I want to work on the
Right.
podcast? So
Yeah, and you
and
have to do your priorities and what you
absolutely,
obviously, and not to say you didn't care about your podcast, but obviously this book you got is your baby right now.
yes.
Yeah.
And my
So,
fear was that working on both at the same time, they both would suffer in a way. I would either not be able to focus fully on the podcast, maybe those writings would suffer and it would become a little lacking, or vice versa. The novel, I'd be focusing too much on the podcast, and maybe the novel would kind of come out subpar. So, I kind of needed to step back, work on one, and maybe revisit the other, down the line. But we both, we're really good friends, best friends.
oh
So
yeah.
it wasn't anything. It was just like, let's take a step back, let's focus on our stuff, and maybe reevaluate it later. But
Well, it's a good show. I sampled some episodes.
thank you.
You guys have a really good rapport. And I do recommend it. This will be linked in the show notes, as long as all your other
Thank you.
good
Thank you so much.
stuff, that your book and everything else. Um, well, so let's just briefly talk a little bit about what are some of the things that you were on. I know you had something like, was it like 80 episodes of this, or
Yeah.
I know you have other things you do as well,
Mhm.
other than this, but um, these are about 82 episodes, I guess.
Yeah. It was
and,
about 80.
and
We were near enough.
yeah, and oh, you have over 100. I'm sorry.
We were near 100. We were almost
Oh,
there. You're about,
yeah.
you're right, about 80.
So, but you know what struck me was you really came up with some. I mean, obviously you hit some, big ones like Roswell. We might get into that, but you found some really interesting cryptid, unknown, missing stories that are kind of maybe off the beaten path. So, what was your method to your madness on that? I guess I should say.
So some of the ideas, you always want to do like the popular ones. You want to hit those, but you also don't want to retread things everyone else has done. So it was kind of this fun thing where we wanted to maybe be like the first person to cover this in depth, or the first podcast. If someone's looking for some obscure thing they just heard about online,
Mhm.
and no one else has covered it, we had the opportunity to be the first
Okay.
person to do it. So there was things like the ocean at night, which is a very bizarre conspiracy. It was like one of our third episode, I think it was third or fourth episode, and that's a very interesting conspiracy that not a lot of people have covered.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
not aware of that. Can you tell us briefly what that's about?
yeah, the ocean at night it hooked like it checked like all the boxes for me, because it
Okay.
had a little bit of monster stuff in it, had a little bit of like government cover up things in it,
Yeah.
otherworldly things. But basically,
Right.
it was this theory that sometime, I think it was in the mid 2000s, like 2010, 2012, something like that. There was some sort of commotion off the coast of Africa, where it was some sort of otherworldly being rose, and there was all these nations that, and this part was with the corroborative part, where there was at one point all these nations that kind of joined forces in this naval exercise
I
off
see.
the coast of Africa, and it was this very kind of once in a lifetime thing. There was no real call for it, but all these nations kind of just set all their naval fleets out to this spot in the ocean for an exercise. So the idea, the conspiracy that came around that was that there was actually some sort of uh, possible world-ending event that they were coming together to combat. So super interesting. There's like all this stuff too with the guy who, man, what was his name? There's this billionaire. What was it, 4chan or well, there was a website. It's not 4chan. I think I misspoke there, but it's a website that
Mhm.
WikiLeaks.
Oh, Assange?
Yes,
Okay.
where he apparently has like documentation that proves this,
Oh, okay.
and
There
he's
was
kind of made like references to it in interviews and things like that, where this is an actual thing that happened and he has the proof of it.
Oh
So
wow, I
it
gotta
was
check
super
that out.
interesting. It was, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
wild one. Not very many people have covered it. You see it a lot
No.
on like those you'll see like those iceberg videos on YouTube, and it will
Hmm.
always be like a passing mention in one of those iceberg videos. So I wanted to do like a whole like comprehensive episode on it. And that's one of our more popular episodes, so people really enjoyed it.
Wow, that's cool. Well, speaking of the ocean, here's one that I wasn't aware of, but I enjoyed it.
Oh yeah.
Monster of Pensacola.
Yeah, that's a fun one. That is a wild
Yeah.
one. Yeah, that one's so crazy because there's it's the there's a survivor and there's victims. Like these are documented
Right.
people. You know, these
Right.
boys went out into the water, only one came back, and he came back with this story. So it's super interesting. A lot of people there's a lot of different theories that surround it. You know, was there foul play? Was it just some like misguided misidentification? Um, some
Is it
sort of maybe just a trauma. That's something that people have talked about. Maybe he was just traumatized by seeing his friends die. That he maybe came up with this story in his head. It's it's a bizarre one and it's an infamous one, and another one that people know about but haven't seen people cover.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of it. Now it's the there's a sunken ship, right? Is it
Yeah, there was
Massachusetts?
I think it was the Massachusetts that was a battleship that was intentionally sunk off the coast of Pensacola as a artificial reef, and that's where they will
Oh,
go
okay.
into as kind of
Right.
uh, a little day trip. They were going out to it to fish because it was a reef and it attracted
Right.
a lot of fish.
I did look at it briefly, and this happened. Was this in the '60s or
Yeah,
the? Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Wow. That's a wild story. And so they never recovered any bodies or.
I believe they recovered one of the
Oh, they
bodies,
did.
but the other ones were lost.
Wow.
Um,
And so
yeah, the only survivor came back with a story that it was a plesiosaur type sea creature that just rose up and took his friends one by one.
that's amazing.
Hmm.
Wow. So what are type of things do you talk about? What are I think I um a story you have like stories of people who disappear.
Yes,
Um
all the big hits. We like doing the of course, cult talk conspiracy. So we focus on conspiracies and things like that. But we like to focus on the missing persons. We did some missing 411 stuff last year. Um, are you familiar with missing 411? David Politis.
no, I'm not. Yeah,
So
good.
David Politis, he's a former
Heard that
FBI.
name. Yeah.
I think he's a former FBI profiler or an FBI investigator. But
Okay.
there are a crazy amount of people who have gone missing in national parks, like
Oh
an
yeah.
obscene amount of them, and it's basically policy of the national parks to just not really do much. They look for like it's a very standardized procedure of like
Right.
you look for a couple days and then you move on.
Yeah.
And there's no real recording of it. Up until he started going out and actively documenting these, there was no files of missing people within national parks. So, of course, that spurred a lot of different theories of UFOs, government cover-ups,
Mhm.
um, maybe serial killers. That's another one. Serial killers operating in national parks because they are such large areas. Feral people. That is something that people really latch on to is these national parks being so large that there are these like feral, malevolent tribes that live within these parks that are taking people. And of course, Bigfoot. Bigfoot's a popular
Yeah.
part of that conspiracy.
Now, as far as Bigfoot, do you think that there? Well, I guess it would depend if there's different types, but do you find from what you've read and heard, are they more friendly or malevolent or maybe both?
I think it depends because I mean you have uh, I've always looked at it as kind of an animal. I mean, um, there's good dogs, there's bad dogs.
Okay.
Just because you see a bear in the woods doesn't mean it's immediately going to charge and shoot to pieces, but it very well may if you don't if you
You don't
make the
right,
wrong move,
right.
things like that. It's an animal, so I mean, I don't think it's inherently evil or inherently good. I think it's just an animal, but also I think there's a very strong intelligence to these creatures
Yeah.
because they have evaded us for so long. And that's one thing I've always said is like I may have an interest in Bigfoot, but I actively believe in Bigfoot. I think it's
Mhm.
um a very believable idea that there are these intelligent creatures that are actually hiding from us. And I think it probably comes from them having enough intelligence to see how we behave as people, and that we're
Yeah.
probably, more than likely not the best creatures to interact with, seeing how we interact
Yeah.
with other things, the way we treat Mother Nature in general. So
Right.
I feel like there is an intelligence behind them, and they actively do avoid us because you have all these stories from Native American times where
Yes.
if you look into those, like the hairy man or the big man, whatever they would
Right.
call him, they would interact with Indians like it was like an animal, like it was they were actively aware of each other. They were actively interacting, making attempts to not interact, like. But then as we kind of colonized America, you see that kind
Yep.
of separate.
Yeah, that was a big cultural change that, I'm sure was disturbing. Obviously, it was
Yeah,
disturbing to the Native Americans and,
absolutely.
but their culture, the way that they live with nature and they respect all the animals, and I can't imagine that they would certainly would have a good relationship with Sasquatch.
Yeah. And there's been like theories too I've read about like the way you like different regions kind of have different Bigfoot behaviors, it seems.
Mhm.
Um a notable one is you have the Pacific Northwest,
Right.
which is kind of the Bigfoot mecca, or at least that's what people believe, is
Mhm.
that's where the most densely populated Bigfoot territory is. And they're kind of just actively evading us. They hide, they do their own thing. Maybe someone stumbles across and gets a picture or a video every now and then. But then you have these creatures in the South, which are very similar, big, hairy,
Mhm.
ape-like creatures, and they're more aggressive. Like you have stories of people being attacked,
Yeah.
or houses being stalked, or cars being attacked, things like that. People going missing. So the
Mhm.
idea that I've read, and also you have differences in the footprints. If you're in
Oh,
the Pacific
really? Okay.
Northwest, yeah, in the Pacific Northwest, you have the classic 5-digit footprint, big, large footprint. But if you go down south, you start to see deformations. You start to see 3 toes or 4 toes, or maybe like
Wow.
oblong shapes. So the idea is that these creatures in the south are Sasquatch creatures, but because of the way we've populated the South, they become cut off from larger
Oh.
populations. So they began to inbreed. Inbreeding comes with
Oh,
being
okay, yeah,
deformed,
deformities, yeah.
deformities, heightened aggression, things like that. So the idea is these creatures have kind of been isolated, inbred, and they're a more aggressive
Mm,
kind of
that's an interesting theory.
unclean version of what
Yeah.
the Bigfoot creature is.
I wonder if, are you familiar with, Doctor, Jeffrey Meldrum?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would like to see what he says about those footprints. That would
Yeah, I'd have to. I guess I'll have to see. I'm sure I've seen him
'cause
talk about it at
I
one point,
mean,
but
he is he knows the stuff on those footprints is amazing.
mm,
Um, well, yeah, Bigfoot I've always been interested in. Of course, I'm much older than you are, and I go way back to, In Search Of and programs like that from old school stuff, but I've always been fascinated, by,
I love the
the
Search of.
Bigfoot.
I
Yeah.
watched that one. Yeah.
That was like the original OG of,
Uh-huh.
it's just what a great show. Leonard Nimoy,
Yep.
and I loved it.
I have a
Um,
book. I think it's in my little bookshelf, but I have like an In Search Of like Bigfoot book I found at like a thrift store
yeah,
that I picked up. Yeah.
that was awesome. Well, I see you have your Roswell hat on there,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah. I got to
guess
go to
we
Roswell. Yeah. I
you
got to
gotta
go to
go.
Roswell last
Yeah, you
year.
went
Yeah.
there. How was that?
That was fun. I went there for
Yeah.
work. I work in the airfield industry, so I got to go to work. I got to go there for work. to ROW, the airport there.
There he is.
There we are.
This guy.
And man, that was a dream trip. I told my boss like forever. I was like, because I know we have a contract up there, and I was like, I want to go, and he was like, I'm going to make sure you go. So
Oh, that's cool.
he sent me there. I went there, and it was a holiday they sent me on, so it was Veterans Day.
Wow.
So I got there on Monday. Monday was Veterans Day, and the airport, none of the guys worked because they were all veterans. So I had all day to just go explore the town and go to the Roswell Museum, see all the sights, go to the stores. And man, that town is just it lives and breathes aliens. It's so cool. It's like if you're into aliens, if you're into UFOs, you have to go to Roswell because
Yeah,
that
I would
whole
like
town
to.
just embraces it.
I think that would be a cool trip to go on. And
The museum was insane. Like it was, I think they charged like $5 to go in, and you could spend all day in there because they have this library in the museum,
oh, okay.
and it is every UFO, every alien book you can think of. They have a file room you go into where it is just walls
Oh,
and
wow.
walls of cardboard boxes just filled with newspaper clippings of
Oh,
UFO and
cool.
alien encounters from newspapers all over the world. So you could go in there and like spend all day and just like research UFOs,
Yeah.
aliens.
I didn't realize that. That's cool.
It was really cool.
Wow. So who's this guy? You know who this is?
I know his name.
I can't
It's
remember his name either, but he
I
was
can't remember. Funny enough, his I believe it's him. His great grandkids own a UFO like merchandise shop in Roswell. I went and got
okay. I'm
a mug for Bailey while I was there,
right.
and the woman gave me like a paper or whatever. And she's talking about her her great grandpa was the one of the first army officials to. She told me his name, and it clicked immediately when she told me his name. But yeah, and she gave me a paper like showing her like family tree and stuff. It was super interesting. But yeah, they were like a Roswell family. Like her dad,
Yeah.
her great grandfather was one of the first on scene. Now they own a UFO like merchandise shop in Roswell. It was a very interesting thing.
So that picture was that's supposedly what they found at the site, which
Yeah,
I guess that's supposed to be a weather balloon or something.
right.
But or that's what they kind of came out with that later. Originally, they had a different story. Um, that's fascinating. What did you? Obviously, you've learned a lot about Area 51. Did you learn any more while you were there in Roswell? Or
Um, mainly about just Roswell. Looking around, seeing all the cool stuff. I didn't realize that the actual crash. It's called the Roswell crash. The actual crash took place quite a bit away from Roswell. Like
mm-hmm.
I think Roswell is just the nearest town
Right,
to it
town, right,
because as I was leaving the last day I was there, I had some time before I my flight was, so I kind of drove around outskirts of Roswell, just kind of took my rental and drove around, and then I seen this sign of like this way to the Roswell crash, and it was like 30 miles. I was like, man, if I'd have known that or sooner, I would have went there, but I had to go catch my flight. But yeah, I guess it was like quite a bit of ways from Roswell actually, but that
right,
was something I guess I'd maybe never pieced together.
right. What- Are you familiar with Bob Lazar?
Yes, yep.
Yeah. What do you think about all that? Do you think
He's
that's a
pretty
real deal,
controversial.
or
Yeah,
yeah?
it's Bob Lazar is one of those guys I think everyone has an opinion on. I mean, he seems to he does a good job at presenting himself
Hmm.
as what he is. Um, and he has answers for everything, which is always nice when you're building
Right.
stories. He's talked too about how people claim that they've looked into it and there's no documented evidence that he ever worked for the military.
Right.
His stance on
Right.
that is like if they've erased it because of what he's doing
Hmm.
now. They've
Right.
done that as kind of discredit him. He is a Bob Lazar. It's one of those things where I really want to believe that he is who he says he is. Um, he hasn't really done anything that I can see that's been I guess malicious or anything like that. But I mean, he is making a pretty decent profit off of being who he says he is. So, um, it's one of those. It's like it's sketchy. It's like you want to believe it, but then you kind of got to remove that little pessimist side of yourself to fully believe in it. But I want to believe. I guess that's the best thing I can say is I want
Yeah.
to believe.
His story is
Here.
compelling. Yeah, the whole when you start getting into the propulsion and how it works and the way he described how basically they're just kind of not just bending time, but bending gravity, the way that the the generator works so that they can move through the atmosphere. It, it sounded very compelling when he talked about the actual crafts
Have
and
you
looking at them. And then he also supposedly had like the actual uh, the isotope or something that he had at his shop or something like that. I don't remember. It was like it was the radium. It was whatever could actually make that generator work.
huh?
Um,
I
but
didn't know he had a shop. Yeah.
yeah, he had a shop. Well, he was this guy who he I guess maybe he really wasn't a physicist, but he could make stuff. He could do a lot of different things, and he made this car, that was really cool. And supposedly they saw that, and that's why they recruited him because they thought maybe he could reverse engineer some of this stuff.
Okay.
Um, but I mean, yeah, I know there's skepticism about that, but I watched a few um, documentary movies about him, and I do find him compelling. Maybe he's a hoax, but I think it's a good story.
I kind of get that too, because like I'll find myself like on like TikTok or Reels or whatever, and like you'll
Mhm.
come across these videos that you know are fake.
Mhm.
Like blatantly, it's a fake story. It's some AI generated, a fake thing, but it's still so entertaining. Like, I'll find myself,
Yeah.
watching these reels of like, sea
Mhm.
monster
Right.
encounters, things like that. And it's like, oh, this is obviously a fake, like, AI generated thing.
Mhm.
But man, it's so interesting. It makes you want to believe. Um,
Yeah. I'm the same way. I just find all this intriguing. That's why I really want to have you on. I love talking about this stuff. I'm a wanna believer. I haven't really experienced a lot of really supernatural or UFO stuff, but I don't have you experienced anything while you in your
um, I grew up
operation?
in Southern Ohio. I grew up, and I was not far from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Mhm.
And growing up in the shadow of Wright Pat, I mean, the skies are like so active. Like that's something.
Right.
If you've never been in that area at night, the sky is just it's just full of stuff. I mean,
Right.
there's flashing, blinking, things like that. Because one Wright Pat, could be doing maneuvers or whatever. But I remember when I was very young, where my grandpa and my dad like seeing something in the sky and like it being this big thing. Like my dad went to the store up the street and like got all the guys out of the store to look up and like seeing all these crazy lights. I remember that pretty vividly. I was looking up and just seeing like the whole sky. It was like like as far as we could see, it was just flashing, just all over. And the thing was apparently is like they were doing some big army exercise
Yeah.
apparently. But I remember looking up and just seeing like everywhere you looked, there was just these flashes in the sky, and that being a wild thing. Um, when I was younger, I would say fifth or sixth grade, I think it was. I have this memory of being at the bus stop with another kid that I met at the bus stop. We stood at the bus stop every morning. Bus would come pick us up, and the bus stop was at the end of this dirt road. It was an old Amish dirt road. It was called Frost Road, and it was top of this hill. And you look down, you could see Frost Road go down in the trees and kind of loop off. And I remember one morning we were sitting there waiting on the bus and we looked around and like all the way down the road we could just see this big like guy. It was a shadow of a guy. It was a big like just dark shape come out of the trees and walk across the road. and like step over the cattle fence and just walk off into the hill.
Whoa.
I remember that like so vividly, and like
Yeah.
it being like really far away. And I always think I was like 5 or 6, or no, not 5, 5th or 6th grade, sorry.
Right.
And that always stuck with me because it like neither of us
Yeah.
knew who it was. And we thought it was
Absolutely.
weird. I mean, it could have been a hunter or something like that, but because we all we'd
Yeah.
seen was this
You don't
big
know,
foot.
man. You got kind of a different vibe off
Yeah,
of it.
exactly. It was early in the morning. It was just he stepped
Strange.
over the cattle fence, which was something that always stuck out to me because I grew up on my own farm, so I know cattle fences aren't short by any means.
Right. Right.
So I just remember that, like seeing him like step over the cattle fence as well. And as far as we were, he could jumped over, but it looked like he just stepped over the cattle fence, just walked off into the his. So that always stuck out to me. But yeah, those are like two things I remember is just constantly as a kid looking up in the night sky at night and just seeing it active, because there's so much at Wright Pat, and that's even an interesting theory that people have is that Area 51 is like a smoke screen. Have you ever heard that theory?
Sure.
So Area 51 is
Yeah,
just a
go ahead.
smoke screen just to get everyone's attention, distract us. And that the real Area 51 is actually Wright Pat Air Force Base.
Mm-hmm.
Because even in the Roswell whole conspiracy, the UFO supposedly was taken to Area 51, but then taken to Hangar 18 in
Right.
Wright Pat. So supposedly the UFO from Roswell is here in Ohio.
That is wild. Yeah, I think what's surprising to me, and not just UFOs, which I'm sure there's been a lot of sightings there, but when I looked at the map, for Bigfoot, the sightings, Ohio's got a lot.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, a whole bunch. I was really like, whoa.
As far as
Um,
cryptids go, we have a very rich cryptid history, like a very diverse cryptid history as well. I mean, uh, I'm looking at a print I have hanging in my office. It's
mhm.
by an artist named Star Cruiser. He's a good friend of mine. He's
Okay.
out of Baltimore, but he does these prints. He does a really cool like art style. Um, and he does these prints of like states with like cryptid, UFO, and ghosts, kind of like
Mhm.
prevalent things around him. And he has an Ohio one, and it's like as soon as I seen it, I remember I heard he was working on it. Told him I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
as
you're
soon as
like,
you drop that, let me have it."
yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, we have Bigfoot, which where I come from, it was the grass man is what we called Bigfoot in Southern
Okay.
Ohio. That was always our thing is the grass man. My grandma would tell me, get back in for dark or the grass man.
There, yeah.
That
That's the
that
old
thing. So that
adage.
was that was what we had is the grass man is what we called him. But even up north, we have the melon heads, which are supposedly these like little diminutive beings with these big gigantic melon heads,
What
and there's all these was that
I was saying, what are those? Yeah, talk to me
so
about
there's
it.
different theories. I've heard like one is like apparently there's a sanatorium up north in Ohio, like up around Cleveland.
Yeah.
Apparently they're like the product of like some evil mad scientist who was like experimenting on kids, and they got out and now they just roam the woods in rural northern Ohio as these giant bulbous headed um creatures. But we also have the frogman. You the
Okay.
frogman
Oh,
Loveland frogman. That's a very Ohio centric cryptid. I don't think anyone else has what the if there ever was like a Ohio State cryptid, I think it'd be the frogman
that would be the
because
one.
it's such a us only cryptid. I've never heard of any similar sightings or any other state reporting anything like it. Um, you have the dogmen stuff, of course. Dogmen are like
Dogman,
huge.
yeah.
Here in the last few years, it's been a very big thing. Is the dogmen, and a lot of people have been going back and looking at past Bigfoot claims and reanalyzing them and thinking, well, these were actually dogmen that people were seeing.
Oh,
Um,
wow. That's
I think
cool.
up what is it? Yellow Eyes, that's a big one.
Okay.
Up near what's that prison where they filmed Shawshank at?
Oh gosh. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember what it's called. But Yellow Eyes is a big thing up there. Yellow Eyes is this Bigfoot type creature that
Right.
people claim to see, and it's so big that all you see is you'll be in
It's
the
a
woods.
surprise.
Yeah, you'll be in the woods and you'll look up and you'll see like this towering shadow with two big yellow eyes. Um, there was one oh where I come from too. There's this little town called Carmel,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a cryptid. It was the Carmel creature is what they called it, and it was like pretty recent. It was like I think 2008 or 9. This old couple was apparently driving over a hill, and they come across. They see this like tall, like 5-6 foot tall thing that is just
Mm-hmm.
this long kind of like this long body with no arms and these two spindly legs and this big like reptilian head, and they
Right.
come over the hill and it sees them and it runs into the woods. And that was the only sighting of it, but that became a big thing for a while.
That's wild.
Yeah, Ohio is just it's so
Yeah, it's
interesting. We have a
rich.
little bit of everything. We
Yeah.
have I think it's Bessie up north in Lake Erie, who is our
Yeah.
Nessie.
Right.
Down south by Cincinnati, there is the indescribable Octoman. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I have not.
Very, very obscure. I think it was something that was reported like in the 30s or 40s, but people kind of forgot about it until very recently. Like I think it was in the last like 10 years or so. Someone was doing a folklore study of Ohio folklore, and they came across these reports of apparently this like big octopus tentacled thing that came out of the Ohio River at one point, and they
Yeah.
called it the indescribable Octoman because that's all it was, just a big mass
That's
of
all they could.
tentacles.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a big mass of tentacles. Um, yeah, I go on and on about Ohio cryptids. Like
That's amazing. Yeah.
I love Ohio cryptids
Yeah.
because we have so much of everything. Like you'll see like some states have like their one thing, but Ohio has just a little bit of it all.
Right.
We have some very major UFO sightings.
Yes.
We have ghosts. We have the headless rider. I think it is the headless bike rider up north. He's like a phantom that people will see. It's a
Okay.
headless man on a motorcycle.
Cool.
We have a moth. We have Mothman. Of course, West
You have a
Virginia has
Mothman as well.
But
Okay.
yeah, but
Yeah.
Mothman has been sighted in Ohio. Because it was just right along the Ohio River where uh, Point Pleasant and all that was. So after the Point Pleasant disaster, there was sightings of Mothman here in Ohio. Like he flew across the river and was over here.
Hmm. That's wild. Yeah, in South Carolina we have the Lizard Man who supposedly was in Florence. And then the only thing that I remember as a kid, we had a road called Monkey Dog Road, and there was a monkey dog down there, and of course, it's a little more built up now, but back in the day, you could go back there at night, and supposedly there's stuff back there, but I never encountered anything. But those are, they're good stories, though.
Yeah.
Folklore is a big part of America. It's and like you said, each area, each state has um their own culture, their own lore, and their deep
Mm-hmm.
lore, and it's fascinating. I know you've studied some of that, so that's really interesting. Are there any other like weird stories that you covered either with Cult Talk or uh?
Um, we we had a show on Cult Talk Net was what we called it. And that was
Mhm.
Cult Talk Conspiracy, Cult of Campbell, and then Cult of Lore. Were the
Right.
3 podcasts we had. And Cult of Lore, they covered a lot of like Warhammer 40K stuff, which I'm not averse to that universe. I don't know anything about it.
Right.
But they would do they're good friends of mine, of course. We're all
Yeah.
friends.
Right.
That's how we did this. But they did every year for 4th of July, I think they did a couple years. They would do these American Tall Tale
Oh
episodes.
yeah.
Well,
Okay.
they would dissect the American Tall Tale stuff, which is something that I've been fascinated for since they brought it up. Really, like I remember as a kid it being very prevalent to me. John Henry, Paul Bunyan, all that stuff.
Right. Paul
But
Bunyan.
it's crazy that nowadays like it's such a almost forgotten part of our history is these like
It
tall
is.
tales, and it's just a shame because man they are so good. The stories behind Paul Bunyan and uh you know Pecos Bill, all these like
Right.
Slewfoot, like these are
Right.
such great stories that we had, and they've almost become forgotten. But those are something that really interests me, and they all kind of have, if you look deeper into them, there is kind of like a basis for them. There was like a person or
Right.
an event that kind of sparked this
Uh,
larger than life story. So that stuff really interests me. Um,
An
and
episode. It's like Davy Crockett or something.
yeah,
Is
Davy
he?
Crockett. Davy Crockett's real. Yeah, that was a
Yes, I know,
real
but
man.
something about is he part
He is,
human or
because
something like that?
he's a real he's a real
Yeah.
guy, but he also, there's all these like fantastical tales around him. That he's
Right.
a half critter. He was just so in tune with the land that he was part of the land. He was part of the animals, and the animals were part of him. So that stuff is cool. Johnny Appleseed, of
Yeah, yeah.
course.
Johnny Appleseed. I was
I
just
mean,
gonna bring.
yeah,
Yeah.
and these really great stories have just they kind of got forgotten. They're almost uh some of them are kind of lost. You'll find some that haven't been talked about in years. Um, yeah, those are, I'm very fascinated by those. I'd love to like find some way to bring those back. That's something I've like pondered as like ways to bring those into storytelling, or maybe
Yeah, I think
interpret
you're right. I
those.
think that would be good. I think those are very American, and the back in the day when they were trying to make it, and these legends and stuff came out, and they're weaved into our culture.
Yeah, it's almost
Um,
like our like the Greeks had like
yes, yes,
their gods. We had Paul Bunyan and Pecos Bill and Johnny Appleseed and things like that. Yeah, it's just a shame people don't talk about those anymore, because they're, if you find the stories and you read them, man, they are so good, and they're like very inspiring, and you can tell, you can really see why they were needed back then.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's myths are part of our the way that we live and the stories we tell that kind of bring us together. And I think some of that's been lost. I think you're right.
Absolutely.
It's just not there. Uh, I want to ask you, what about Mount Shasta?
Oh, that
That's
that's a wild
I had
one.
read something about that, but it was a lot more than I had realized.
Yeah, Mount Shasta. I mean, there's a more than I realize sometimes. You'll kind of look into Mount Shasta. There's so much weird stuff that happens there. Bigfoot stuff, of course.
Yeah.
UFOs. There are supposedly like hidden doors on Mount Shasta that take you into like an inner realm. We talked about Mount Shasta on Cult Talk Conspiracy, but we also talked about a man named Richard Shaver, who I had never heard of prior to Cult Talk Conspiracy. And he kind of birthed the idea of this like inner world. I mean, the inner Earth has always been like a thing, Jules
Right.
Verne and all
Right.
that, but he kind of birthed this like mythology around it, of these beings called the Lemurians. And Mount
Right.
Shasta is apparently, it was an ancient civilization that got destroyed. The last remaining descendants are somewhere on Mount Shasta or inside of Mount Shasta. But Richard Shaver was this guy who he he claims that all this stuff just came to him. He was being used as this kind of conduit for this ancient civilization to kind of uh, I guess bring forth their mythology. And there's a lot of like ethical stuff that comes into play, because he was a man with like deep mental struggles. Like he struggled with a lot through his whole life. But he began writing for, I think it was Fate magazine, um Other Worlds magazine, I know, was one, but there was a guy, Richard Palmer, I think was his name. He was kind of the publisher, Raymond Palmer. Raymond
Yeah.
Palmer, he was the publisher of like all these magazines. And he would have Richard Shaver stories featured prominently. They were called the Shaver Mysteries.
Oh wow.
And they were some of the most popular features in that magazine. So, and he would just constantly kind of like poke and prod Richard for these stories. and the kind of ethical dilemma comes in is like it almost seems like Ray Palmer was kind of exploiting him. This
Yeah.
man who had these like mental issues, he was like exploiting him for financial gain. But he has a lot of interesting stuff, and it's kind of if you believe, whose side of the story you believe is your Ray Palmer's. This guy just came to me with all these stories, or other people on the outside were saying no, or he was like kind of exploiting this guy. Um, Very interesting stuff there. I was at a antique mall, I think it was like
Hmm.
a couple years ago, and I actually found a couple of these shaver mysteries. Like,
Oh wow.
just found them in like an antique store. I bought me and Bailey both an issue. That I kind of have just kind of like a memento, but um, yeah, that stuff that you'll find. You'll If you look into Mount Shasta long enough, you'll eventually get into the Richard Shaver stuff.
Yeah,
Uh,
I did look at some of that what you had, and the Lemurians and the
yes,
did they got in a fight with the Atlanteans?
yeah, it was the Atlanteans, and then the Lumerians created like there was a couple beings they had, like I think there was the Telos, the Delos,
Right.
and like I think it was the Telos were the like the creators, the Delos were the creations, and then like the Delos eventually rebelled against the Telos. It's a whole like mythology.
I
It's
know.
a space opera kind of
It's
thing.
it's interesting because I've always been fascinated with Atlantis as well.
Mm.
And there's so many things. I don't know how much you're into like ancient civilization
Oh,
stuff.
I love
Like,
ancient civilization stuff. Yeah.
did you see I was thinking about doing a a video on this. The recent discoveries they think are underneath the Giza pyramid.
No, I
Uh,
didn't hear about that. No.
it's I wish I should have brought it up, but anyway, it's this group of Italian. I think there's one who is well, he's a scientist. There's another one who is just an expert on like sonar, radar type stuff. Um, and they did basically they use a satellite, and now the radar, whatever you want to call it, that penetrates the ground, it doesn't go very far. But then there's another aspect to it that they use like a type of sonar to bounce to see if there's stuff underneath there.
Okay.
So they published a paper in 2022, but it didn't really go very far. And they proposed that there's actually these structures, like giant pedestals that go down like 660 feet. But then what happened is they, it's my understanding, they got AI to look at it and they actually constructed these images of what they think it might be. And they're like these giant pedestals and they have like spirals around them. So, you know, I, I'm fascinated with this stuff. Like, I don't know, you know who Christopher Dunn is?
Uh,
He's
doesn't okay.
he's the one who proposes that pyramid because they don't, or like, you know who Graham Hancock is?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So they don't believe that that pyramid is a tomb. So they come up with their theories about what it might be, and Christopher Dunn is this guy who believes it's a actually a power plant that
Wow.
produces and creates energy. So I think this might be part of that, because basically you have these aquifers that are underneath that would have to be used to power such a thing.
Yeah.
Um, that's a whole different thing because they're, always the question is, how did they build these things?
Yeah.
And how did they build them with such precision? And how did, it's like, oh, they said it took 25 years, but there's just things that just don't seem to be able, and they can't really recreate it. Today, they can't exactly figure out the engineering because of the weight of some of these things are just
Yeah.
immense. But anyway, it's really fascinating. But if you know
Have
anything about the lore of the pyramids under the Sphinx, or supposedly the Atlantean tables, and
Have
that,
you
that
read
really, yeah,
have you read much like the giant stuff, like the the giants, real life giant stuff? Have you read any of that stuff? Like
yeah,
that's some fascinating stuff. And there was a like a TikTok thing a couple years ago where like a guy claimed to have like get a video of a giant. Have you seen that? Have you heard that one?
I was in the one that, I don't know if it's true or not. That was the Giant of Kandahar or something like that.
Yeah, that one's
Like,
good too. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that but there was a thing a couple years ago where this TikToker, I think he was like driving or something like that, but he stops on the side of the road, and I think he was in either like the either Mexico or like the plains part of the US.
Mm-hmm.
And he turns his camera up to this hill, and you see like this hill, and you see this figure standing on top of the hill, and it's like it at a distance like it looks small, but in comparison to the mountain, like it's huge. Like
Right.
it's got to be
Huge.
huge to be that visible. And that was like a big viral video that blew up. And the guy starts making more videos, going back to the spot that's no longer there. People are saying, "Oh, it was a cell tower, or a structure, or whatever it may be. It was a fire tower, whatever." And he goes back and he takes video, and it's not there. It's just the mountain, all this stuff. And then eventually he goes missing. Like he actually goes missing. Like his family
Oh
is like
wow.
looking for him, and I think he passed away. Like they just never find him. And it was like a big thing on TikTok where it kind of sparked re-interest into that whole giants are real thing, because there's a lot of really interesting, compelling evidence in our history that giants may have actually been like these real things. And it brought me to that because you were talking about Giza and stuff, and that was like a thing I'd heard is like
The Giant.
pyramids are
Yeah.
giants. Yeah, like they made the pyramids,
That
and
very well. Yeah.
it's super interesting stuff like that. Like talking about earlier, we were talking about the American legends and stuff like that kind of
Mhm.
dying. The tall tales, and it makes you wonder like how many other stories have like
Oh yeah.
died off throughout the we don't even realize because they died off so long ago. And
No, I don't know how much you're into the Tartaria stuff.
that doesn't ring a bell.
Yeah, Tartaria is the basic, and I'm not deep into it, but it is fascinating. Their basic theory is that a lot of our history has been erased. That there are these fantastic buildings and things that they used to create um, that are actually older than we realize, and they try to go beneath and look to see what's under the building or lower parts of the building under the ground. They say they find things that make it seem like this is very, very old. They There's stuff with world fairs about
I've
what
seen
they
that.
had.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is they've got old maps that talk about a place called Tartaria. That
What wasn't the
those
World Fair thing like? There's like pictures of, like World Fairs where there was like these giant elaborate
Mhm.
structures that were just there's not
Yeah,
there anymore. Like no one.
right.
And like the claim is like, oh, they were just like these facades made, and but people are like, oh no, these are actual structures that were just
Yeah,
no longer
yeah.
there.
That's the thing, is that most of the people that would have remembered that they're no longer with us. So we
Yeah.
only have what's recorded, what's if there was photography. Um, and so I mean, that's what it comes to. A lot of this is there's so many things we don't know. It could have been recorded. There could be more information about them that's just been lost. They talk about the old the books that got burned in the Alexandria library, long ago in Egypt,
Yeah.
um, of all sorts of different knowledges and mystery religions and all these things. That's the kind of stuff that I'm fascinated with as well.
Yeah.
But
You start
you
thinking about
know,
that, and it's very yeah, it like makes it really does make you wonder like how much have we lost over the centuries. Like you're speaking about the fire in Alexandria. I mean, it's just probably just irreplaceable knowledge that we never be able to recover again. It's gone.
yeah, all sorts of stuff. A lot of wars have erased a lot of things, and or
True.
just quote unquote progress as we move things. And
Yeah.
I guess the only good thing is that sometimes when they're building or doing roads, they do come across some things.
Yeah.
Actually, try to preserve it as best they can, which is good. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that, um, you know, they believe the pyramids are much older. They, um, man, and when did he inhabit Earth? They see where things like that. You ever heard of the Younger Dryas
That sounds familiar. I
theory?
yeah.
That's basically like a comet that came in and obliterated like um, Alaska on down and just changed and probably wiped out civilizations that were there. They had to restart. So that's like Graham Hancock. That's his basic theory is that we've had advanced civilizations before, and a lot of times they got wiped out by some kind of disaster or something like that. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. I seen you had you'd sent me before we were started recording. You sent me a like a list of like questions, and one that stuck
Mhm.
out to me was you had on one of it you just had Bruce Campbell.
Yeah, I do want to talk
Questions
about Bruce. Yeah, let's.
that stuck out to me is you had all these
Absolutely.
questions and just Bruce Campbell, and I was like, it stuck
Well,
out.
I would be remiss. So this guy here,
Yeah,
Bruce, I don't know who Bruce Campbell
my
is.
buddy Bruce.
Yeah. So tell me about Bruce.
Bruce, my favorite actor. I probably watched Evil Dead 2 when I was way too young, and
Yeah.
I since then it's been Ash has been my guy. Um, yeah, Bruce. When I finally wrote my friends and starting a podcast network, because all my friends had like talked about like, oh, let's start a podcast or podcast, and I always just like, let's just start one. Like, enough talking, let's just do it. And it was around the time of COVID, we didn't have anything else to do,
Right.
so I was like, I want to start a niche because if you make a horror movie podcast, you become just one of 100 horror movie podcasts. But I was like, what if we cornered like just a niche?
Mhm.
And I was like, Bruce Campbell is horror. Like that's when I think of horror
Yeah.
movies, I think of Evil Dead.
He's a big figure.
And Bruce also has his hands in those things. He's been Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Um, he's got a bunch of Disney movies. Um, comedy, action, you name it. He's got it all.
Mhm.
So, and I've just always liked Bruce Campbell. And we started Cult of Campbell is what we call it. It was our first podcast. And what we would do is we would review a Bruce Campbell movie and we'd rate it on either if it's
Mhm.
groovy or not groovy. And it wasn't the
Right.
quality of the movie we were rating. It could be a bad
Right.
movie, but what was the quality of Bruce Campbell in the movie? So that was awful. That was oftentimes a very difficult decision to make. Sometimes Bruce is in movies that maybe aren't as high quality as you'd like him to be, but he
Yeah.
does. He's the shining star of the movie. So it's like
He
I
is.
I didn't enjoy the movie, but damn, I really liked when Bruce Campbell was on screen. So it's a groovy.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen Bubba Hotep?
No, what I've seen parts of it. I know who you're
Okay,
talking about. Yeah.
go out of your way to
It's
look up Bubba
actually
Hotep.
pretty
That's one of my
good.
favorite. That's one of my favorite
Yeah.
films. I would dare to say not just Bruce Campbell movies, but just one of my favorite films just in general. Army of Darkness is one of my favorite films, though. Is
Yeah.
that's a classic.
That's a classic. Yeah, it is.
But we did Call to Campbell for it was about a year we did it, and then I got hit up by this a really good friend of mine now. Her name is Selena. She reached out to me on Instagram, and she's like, "Hey, I found your podcast, and I'm doing this thing called Bruce Fest,
Oh, cool.
and it was the annual gathering of Bruce Campbell fans featuring Bruce Campbell."
Yeah.
And it was in Estes Park, Colorado. Estes Park, Colorado is the basis for The Shining. That's
Oh,
the
yeah.
hotel
Okay.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
Stephen
Yeah.
King stayed in the hotel, and that was where The Shining, the concept of The Shining came from. So, they brought us out to Estes Park, Colorado. First time I've ever been that far out west. Me, my buddy Michael, and my buddy Eric, two of my best friends. We went out to Colorado, and I got to host with Bruce Campbell. Got to meet him backstage, and it was insane. It was like I started this little podcast with my friends, with maybe the hope that at one point Bruce Campbell would like one of our pictures. That was like the hope. It's like, oh, and he did. Like before we did Bruce Fest, the biggest thing he had is like the day before Christmas, he liked one of our posts on Instagram,
Oh, cool.
and that was like the craziest thing. I was like, we've reached the pinnacle. And then it wasn't but like 2 months later, Selena reached out to me, and we got to go meet Bruce, and it was one of the most surreal feelings in the world. Like being able to, I was like, just one of those moments where you're like, oh, I can, whatever I set my mind to, I can do it. It was kind of like what I was, you kind of thought from that point on, and I've kind of carried that thought forward. Is like, I want to meet Bruce Campbell, and I made it happen. I went and met Bruce Campbell and got to host with him. Like we shared a stage together.
That's cool.
That was
awesome.
loud.
Yeah, I guess the only thing close that I could say about that is I got to meet William Shatner.
Hey, Shatner's cool.
Captain Kirk. That's more my jam back in the day. But yeah, that was fun. I definitely can understand that. Bruce Campbell, I always think of that. Yeah, a TV show.
Burn Notice. Yeah, Burn Notice. He had
no, he had his own TV show. It's kind of a western.
Briscoe County Jr.
Yeah, Briscoe. I like.
Yeah, that
was a fun show.
Very underrated. And like sci-fi elements to it. Like people forget about it. Like it's fantastic.
Yeah, I love that one. I was upset that it didn't last that long. I think it kind of reminded me of. Yeah,
I think it's on Tubi.
Oh, okay. I'll have to look it up. Yeah, it kind of reminded me a little bit of Wild Wild West.
Yes.
Another show from way back.
I've never seen the show. I've seen the movie. I wasn't a fan.
Yeah. At least check out a little bit of it. Yeah, that's on. I think it's on Pluto for sure. Okay. You can check it out. But yeah, that was Jim West was my awesome. Yeah, definitely. Well, are there any other things? I know I definitely want to push your book again here. We've got Monstrous coming out June 10th.
June 10th on Amazon.
Had a marvelous time with Ty Alexander.
I've really enjoyed myself. I've really enjoyed talking all kinds of crazy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you anything else you want to share or talk about as far as what you're doing with your book, or just we'll see it on Amazon soon?
We'll see on Amazon. I hope everyone enjoys it. I really hope everyone at least gives it a chance to read it. This is something that's been with me since I was, probably 16, 15, 16, when I first came up with this, like the core basis of what Monstrous would be. But now with a better understanding of writing, it's far exceeds anything I ever thought it would be. But it's a labor of love. It's it's a story I feel like I was always meant to tell. I tried many times to write a novel and never happened, but this is the one that always stuck with me for years. And you
put it all together.
Together. It was a surreal feeling. I got I got the author print.
You got it in your hands.
That was wild. Like coming in, opening up, and like, man, this is a real book. Like it's a real thing. Like, so
yeah, it's not virtual. That's real paper.
Exactly.
Awesome. Yeah, you should be very proud of yourself.
I appreciate that. I hope everyone enjoys it.
Absolutely.
Keep up to date with me on Instagram. Alexander Writes.
I definitely will.
Sorry. And my website, TYALEXANDERWRITES.com. That's I've got some stuff coming to TYALEXANDERWRITES.com. I got a couple little short stories coming up that are preludes to Monstrous.
Yes.
That kind of set the world up before the novel. So that's look out for. Right. They're free. They're exclusive. Or less than, just little. They're less than 1,000 words. But there's 2 of them coming. One is called the Dilemma. The other is called The Kill. And
awesome.
They're very fun. Just little 1,000-word short stories, just to kind of introduce everyone to the world of Monstrous before the novel. So I'll keep you guys posted on Instagram when those come out.
Absolutely.
They'll be free.
Let's keep in touch, Ty. This has been wonderful, and you got another book. We'll come and visit with you again.
Absolutely.
Great.
I thank you for having me, David. This has been really fun.
Absolutely. This has been Shall We Consider Monstrous with Ty Alexander. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.